Do you constantly rescue
Carl
people
Jung
who
says
don't
you
actually
must
want
not
to be
help?
rescued?
There's a truth
because
most
if that
people
sounds
refuse to
familiar,
accept.
you need
The
to
greatest act
understand
of
something
compassion is
critical
sometimes
about human
refusing to help.
psychology.
Carl
that
Jung
spent his
decades
entire career
documenting a
mapping.
dangerous
Let's
pattern
start
in
with the
human
first type.
psychology.
Jung
He discovered
documented
that
patients
helping
whose
certain
shadow wasn't
personality
anger or
types
violence.
doesn't heal them.
Their
It
shadow
enables
was something
them,
far more
prevents their
insidious.
psychological
Complete
growth,
inertia,
and drains
these
your own energy in
individuals
the
had
process.
identified so
Jung
completely
called these
with their
individuals
unlived
the unlived
life that they
life
become
carriers.
psychological
And today
black
you'll learn
holes.
exactly who
Every
they
ounce
are.
of energy
But
you
here's
invested
what
in them
makes this
disappeared
discovery
without
so
trace. Jung called this state the identification with stagnation. And it's far more common than you think. Here's how you recognize them. They're not temporarily tired or going through a difficult phase. They've built an entire identity around not acting. They use philosophical superiority to justify practical paralysis. They speak about waiting for the perfect moment, about needing to feel inspired, about respecting their natural rhythms. But Jung saw through this immediately. This wasn't wisdom. This was fear wearing a spiritual mask. The chronically lazy person Jung described had one consistent pattern. They could articulate exactly what needed to be done with crystal clarity. They understood their problems, saw the solutions, even acknowledged the consequences of inaction, but they never moved. And here's the critical insight Jung discovered. Your help doesn't create momentum in these individuals. It removes the necessary tension they need to act. Every time you rescue them from the consequences of their inaction, you delay their psychological development. Jung observed this repeatedly in his practice. The parent who keeps paying rent for the adult child who won't work. The partner who takes over all responsibilities while the other person pursues endless self-discovery. The friend who provides constant emotional support while the person makes zero changes to their situation. These helpers believed they were being compassionate. Jung realized they were being used as psychological crutches that prevented growth. The chronically lazy individual needs to feel the full weight of their choices. They need to experience the natural consequences of sustained inaction. Your intervention delays this necessary crisis. Jung wrote that some people only grow through what he called productive suffering. Remove that suffering through misplaced compassion, and you remove their only motivation to change. Jung documented one particularly revealing case in his private notes. A 28-year-old man whose family had supported him for a decade while he claimed to be working on a novel. He had genuine talent, could discuss literature with sophistication, and seemed perpetually on the verge of breakthrough. But the novel never materialized. His family's financial support meant he never had to face the reality that he was using creative aspiration as an excuse for complete life avoidance. It wasn't until his father finally cut him off that the man was forced to confront his pattern. Within 6 months, he had steady employment. Within a year, he'd actually completed more writing than in the previous decade. The help had been the problem. Here's what happens when you finally stop helping the chronically lazy. They'll attempt to guilt you. They'll frame your boundary as cruelty, as abandonment, as proof that you never really cared. They'll find someone else to enable them if possible. But there are people who carry light within them. They walk toward growth, truth, and understanding. Then there are others who resist every helping hand. They drain your energy and block your evolution. Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But some refuse transformation. These are the ones you must not help. You cannot save those who choose blindness over awareness. You cannot lift those who worship their wounds. Help becomes poison when given to the wrong person. Here are 6 kinds of dangerous people you must stop saving. They see themselves as forever wronged by life. Every setback becomes proof that the world is unfair. They talk about what was done to them, not what they can do now. Their words are heavy with blame. They carry the past like a shield, using it to excuse every failure. When you offer help, they accept it only to repeat their suffering in new ways. They do not want healing, they want possible. But there are people who carry light within them. They walk toward growth, truth, and understanding.
Truth and understanding. But there are
Temporary relief, but soon the pattern returns. They find new reasons to be hurt, new enemies to blame, new chaos to drown in. Helping them becomes a cycle without progress. Your energy becomes their escape from responsibility. You start to feel guilty for not doing enough, while they feel justified in doing nothing. The more you give, the less they change. To break free, you must see that their suffering is a choice. Until they decide to see themselves as capable, no amount of support will free them. Your compassion cannot replace their courage. You can listen, but you must not carry. You can care, but you must not save. True help begins only when they stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What can I learn?" Until then, your role is to step back, let them face their reflection. Only through the discomfort of truth can they begin to awaken. They enter your life with warmth and charm. They seem grateful, curious, and in need of understanding. At first, you feel good helping them. You believe your presence brings comfort and guidance. But over time, something shifts. You start to feel tired after speaking with them. You sense your energy fade, yet you cannot explain why. The energy thief does not always attack directly. They drain through constant emotional need, endless complaints, and subtle guilt. They thrive on attention. They need to be seen, heard, and comforted. Every conversation revolves around their struggles. When you share your thoughts, they redirect it back to themselves. They mistake your empathy for permission to take without limit. You begin to notice that your good mood disappears after meeting them, replaced by irritation or fatigue. That is not coincidence. It is the cost of your energy being consumed without balance. Jung taught that every relationship involves an exchange of psychic energy. The energy thief never gives equal exchange. They take from your emotional reserves to fill their emptiness. Yet no amount is ever enough. Their inner void grows the more you try to fill it. They confuse sympathy with love and dependency with connection. Helping them becomes a slow erosion of your peace. They may disguise their need as friendship or vulnerability. They may flatter you to keep you engaged. But their attention is conditional. Once you stop feeding their need, they turn cold or distant. Some even make you feel guilty for pulling away, accusing you of being selfish. This is how they maintain control. They do not seek healing, they seek supply. You must learn to recognize the signs. You feel emotionally drained after contact. You feel responsible for their feelings. You begin to avoid confrontation to keep the peace. These are warnings that your boundaries are being crossed. Helping the energy thief does not save them. It only delays their reckoning. They must face their emptiness alone. Your withdrawal may become the mirror that forces them to look inward. Protect your energy. Give from strength, not from exhaustion. Compassion does not mean surrendering your vitality. You can care without being consumed. The more you value your inner peace, the less power the energy thief has over you. They often appear kind, attentive, and trustworthy. Their words sound sincere, and their timing is perfect. They study what you value, then mirror it back to you. At first, you feel seen and understood. You believe you have found an ally. But what you are really seeing is a mask, carefully shaped to gain your confidence. The masked manipulator hides self-interest behind the appearance of care. They are skilled at emotional reading. They watch how you react, then adjust their tone to fit your expectations. They do not confront directly. They guide your emotions until you act in ways that serve their purpose. You think the decision is yours, but they have already planted the idea. Jung believed that what we fail to recognize in ourselves appears outside as fate. The manipulator understands this unconsciously. They sense the parts of you that crave validation or belonging, then use them to gain influence. Their kindness has a cost. Their advice often sounds wise but leads you toward dependence. They make you question your judgment, so you rely on theirs. When you start to see the pattern, they switch tactics. They show sudden vulnerability or share a personal story to regain your sympathy. Each move is designed to reset your trust. They feed on your empathy, using it to control the flow of connection. You may feel uneasy around them, but you cannot explain why. Your intuition whispers that something feels off. That is your unconscious trying to warn you. The manipulator's power works best in confusion. They blur truth and twist facts until you doubt your perception. They might say things like, "You misunderstood me," or "You're too sensitive." Over time, their goal is not to harm you openly, but to make you question yourself silently. When you finally resist, they shift the blame. They accuse you of being ungrateful or unkind. This reversal traps you in guilt. Many stay in such dynamics out of fear of conflict or desire for peace. But peace built on manipulation is only submission. Helping a manipulator never leads to change. They interpret kindness as weakness. Your compassion becomes their leverage. The more you give, the more control they seek. The only way to disarm them is through clarity and distance. You must stop explaining yourself. You must stop seeking fairness from someone who feeds on confusion. Jung said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The manipulator avoids this by controlling others. If they looked inward, they would face their own emptiness. Instead, they use people as mirrors to project strength they do not possess. You cannot heal them by staying close. You can only protect yourself by walking away. They seek advice but never act on it. They listen to every word yet change nothing. Their questions sound sincere, but their purpose is comfort, not growth. They want reassurance that they are right, not wisdom that will challenge them. You may spend hours guiding them, only to find them repeating the same mistakes again. The unwilling learner does not fear ignorance. They fear transformation. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." The unwilling learner avoids this pain. They cling to familiar suffering because it feels safe. Growth requires humility, discipline, and discomfort. They reject all three. They claim to want answers, but they protect their illusions. When truth appears, they retreat into excuses. When responsibility calls, they hide behind circumstances. You will notice that they always have a reason why things cannot change. It is their boss, their partner, their luck, or their past. Everything is the problem except their own attitude. They collect knowledge but never apply it. Books, seminars, and advice become decoration for their stagnation. They confuse talking about change with actually changing. At first, helping them feels noble. You want to see them evolve. You believe that a spark of understanding will ignite transformation. But soon, you realize they are not waiting for insight. They are waiting for rescue. They want others to carry the weight of their indecision. They hope that if someone explains enough, they can avoid taking action. Every teacher encounters this type. Every mentor learns that not all students seek growth. The unwilling learner prefers the comfort of ignorance to the responsibility of awareness. They resist accountability because it threatens their identity. Admitting fault would destroy the fragile image they protect. They fear success as much as failure, because success demands consistency. When you keep teaching them, you waste your strength. Your effort becomes background noise in their cycle of avoidance. They agree with your advice to please you, not to apply it. You leave the conversation feeling drained, while they feel validated in doing nothing. The only cure for this condition is consequence. When life finally forces them to face reality, learning may begin. But until that moment, your help becomes interference. You protect them from the lessons they need most. If you wish to grow, stop surrounding yourself with those who refuse to grow. Real learners act, even when afraid. They stumble, they reflect, and they rise stronger. The unwilling learner does none of this. They stand still, blaming the wind for their motionless state. They watch you closely. They smile when you succeed, but the smile is tight, controlled. Inside, something burns. The envious soul cannot bear another's light, because it reminds them of their own darkness. They measure their worth by your achievements. When you rise, they feel smaller. When you fail, they feel relief. Their friendship is performance, their praise a disguise. Carl Jung wrote that envy is the shadow of admiration. It is the part of the psyche that cannot accept inferiority. The envious soul lives in this shadow. They admire what they secretly despise. They want what you have, yet they refuse to do what you did to earn it. Their desire is not for growth, but for possession. They want your results without your struggle. You will notice their patterns. They copy your words, your work, even your style, yet they never give credit. They compete in silence while pretending cooperation. They ask questions not to learn, but to measure. They speak well of you in public, but diminish you in private. If you share your dreams, they respond with doubt disguised as concern. Are you sure that will work? Maybe you're expecting too much. Their goal is to plant hesitation in your mind. Their energy is heavy, filled with quiet resentment. You will sense it even when they speak kindly. Your successes trigger their insecurity. Your confidence threatens their fragile self-image. Jung said that what we reject in ourselves appears in others as something intolerable. The envious person rejects their own potential, then despises you for living it. Helping them is a mistake. They do not want guidance. They want confirmation that life is unfair. If you lift them, they resent that they needed your help. If you withhold, they accuse you of arrogance. Whatever you do, they interpret it as proof of inequality. Their envy blinds them to truth. You cannot heal envy with generosity. The more you give, the more it grows. They see your kindness as superiority, not sincerity. They will always search for hidden motives. When you succeed, they whisper that you were lucky. When you struggle, they feel vindicated. Their world depends on comparison. Without it, they lose identity. The envious soul lives in quiet torment. They cannot celebrate others because they cannot accept themselves. Their heart is trapped between admiration and resentment. The cure lies in self-awareness, but few reach it. It requires humility, the ability to say, "What I hate in you reveals what I deny in me." Most are not ready for that truth. You must protect your peace. Limit what you share. Let your results speak, not your words. Recognize that envy cannot be softened by kindness. It must be left to dissolve in its own emptiness. Walk forward without apology for your growth. Those who truly love you will feel inspired, not threatened. Those who envy you will expose themselves by their silence. Stay grounded. Keep creating. Let their shadows stay behind you. They live through their suffering. Every hardship becomes a stage for display. They speak of pain as if it were virtue. They use struggle to earn sympathy and control. The false martyr does not seek healing. They seek validation. Their wounds are not lessons, they are tools. They build identity around sacrifice, convincing others that endurance equals goodness. You will notice how they describe their life. Every story centers on what they have endured. They never speak of responsibility, only of burden. They present themselves as victims of fate, yet they secretly take pride in it. Suffering gives them importance. It allows them to command attention without asking directly. When others feel pity, they feel powerful. Carl Jung said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. The false martyr does exactly that. Instead of confronting fear, guilt, or resentment, they glorify pain. By turning suffering into identity, they escape self-examination. They convince themselves that their misery proves moral superiority. It becomes their defense against growth. They often appear selfless. They sacrifice time, comfort, and energy for others, but their giving is not free. It carries silent expectations. They give to be noticed. They endure to be admired. When appreciation does not come, they withdraw affection and play the role of the misunderstood saint. They make others feel guilty for not recognizing their sacrifice. Their relationships are heavy. You will always feel you owe them something. Their words are filled with reminders of what they have done for you. They do not forgive easily because forgiveness would end their control. Guilt keeps others near, so they keep guilt alive. When you try to help them, they resist. They reject solutions that would end their suffering. Peace would rob them of identity. They need conflict to stay relevant. They create new problems when old ones fade. Helping them only strengthens the cycle. You become part of their audience, and they perform the role of the wounded giver. The danger lies in how easily their behavior hides behind virtue. Compassion, loyalty, and sacrifice are noble qualities, but when used to manipulate, they become poison. The false martyr confuses attention with love and pain with meaning. They cannot imagine being valued without suffering, so they keep creating it. You cannot save them by giving more. You can only step back and let their illusion collapse. When no one applauds the performance, the act loses power. Sometimes silence is the only cure. They must face the truth that life's worth is not measured by suffering, but by self-awareness. Jung believed that healing begins when the shadow is seen. The false martyr's shadow is pride disguised as pain. Until they see this, they will continue to wear their wounds as crowns. Protect your energy. Recognize the difference between true selflessness and emotional manipulation. Real strength is quiet, and real love asks for nothing in return. Compassion is not the same as rescue. It is not blind giving or endless forgiveness. True compassion sees clearly. It recognizes pain but also recognizes choice. To feel deeply is human, but to help wisely is divine. Many confuse compassion with self-sacrifice, believing that love means never saying no. That belief destroys both the giver and the receiver. Carl Jung said that every virtue carries its opposite within it. Compassion without discernment becomes weakness. It turns mercy into enabling. When you help without awareness, you feed the very behavior that causes suffering. You soothe the symptom but strengthen the illness. True compassion asks questions. It observes whether help leads to growth or dependency. Discernment is the boundary that keeps empathy clean. It lets you see when someone wants healing and when they only want comfort. It helps you sense whether your presence inspires responsibility or laziness. It demands that you look beyond emotion and study pattern. Many people cry for relief, but few truly desire change. Discernment helps you know the difference. Without it, compassion becomes exploitation. People who refuse self-awareness use your kindness as permission to stay asleep. They expect endless understanding while offering no effort. You start carrying their weight, and they start expecting it. Slowly, you lose peace, and they lose accountability. This is not love, it is decay. Compassion with discernment is firm yet kind. It says, I see your pain, but I also see your power. It listens, but it does not absorb. It gives, but it does not deplete. It supports, but it does not rescue. This form of compassion respects both souls. It honors the dignity of the other by refusing to treat them as helpless. Jung believed that true growth happens in confrontation with the shadow. Discernment allows that confrontation. It helps you offer truth instead of comfort, when comfort only hides the problem. Sometimes the most compassionate act is distance. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is saying no. To live with wise compassion is to balance heart and mind. You feel deeply but remain anchored in clarity. You understand that not everyone who suffers wants transformation. You learn to care without losing yourself. When your compassion is guided by discernment, your help becomes healing. It uplifts without draining. It teaches without controlling. It gives without losing balance. This is the kind of compassion that strengthens both the giver and the receiver. Helping someone who rejects responsibility is like pouring water into a broken cup. No matter how much you give, nothing stays. They will always find a reason to avoid accountability. Their mistakes are never their own. It is always bad luck, unfair people, or impossible circumstances. When you offer advice, they nod in agreement but return to the same behavior. They want relief, not responsibility. Carl Jung said that people will do anything to avoid facing their own soul. Rejecting responsibility is one of those ways. It protects the ego from shame and failure. To accept responsibility means to face the truth about who you are, and many find that unbearable. They would rather stay weak and blameless than strong and accountable. When you try to help such a person, your energy only reinforces their illusion. They will come to you with stories of injustice, expecting sympathy. If you point out their role in the situation, they become defensive or angry. They do not seek growth, they seek validation. They want someone to confirm that the world is against them. When you refuse, they see you as cold or disloyal. But what they call loyalty is actually submission to their denial. Over time, helping them drains your strength. You find yourself solving problems that they created and will soon recreate. You become their emotional safety net while they continue to ignore their part in every failure. The cycle never ends because they have no reason to change. Someone else always absorbs the cost of their choices. True help begins with truth. You can only help those who take ownership of their life. Without that, there can be no transformation. Responsibility is the doorway to change. It is the moment a person stops blaming and starts building. When someone rejects that doorway, you cannot force them through it. You can only step back and let consequences teach what comfort never will. Helping the irresponsible is not compassion, it is interference. It shields them from the lessons they must face. Jung believed that growth comes through confrontation with reality. When you rescue them, you block that confrontation. You delay their maturity. You trade your peace for their avoidance. You must learn to see refusal of responsibility as a boundary. When a person will not own their actions, your help becomes fuel for their denial. Walk away. Let them face the weight of their choices. Only then can they understand the cost of inaction. Real compassion does not protect people from truth. It trusts that they are capable of handling it. When you stop rescuing those who reject responsibility, you give them a chance to meet their own strength. That is the only help that ever lasts. Your energy is your life force. It fuels your thoughts, emotions, and actions. When it is drained, everything around you weakens. Emotional parasites feed on that force. They survive by drawing from your attention, time, and compassion. They rarely appear as enemies. They come as friends, partners, or family members who constantly need, complain, or depend on your emotional labor. Carl Jung said that what you resist not only persists but grows in size. When you keep tolerating energy drainers, they expand their reach. Emotional parasites sense your empathy. They know you will listen, help, and forgive. So they return again and again, not to connect but to consume. Every conversation becomes about their pain, their frustration, their endless chaos. They never arrive to share peace. They arrive to transfer their burden. At first, you might not notice it. You want to be kind, so you listen. But after spending time with them, you feel heavy. Your mind feels cluttered, your mood dull. You find yourself overthinking what you said or how you could have helped more. That confusion is the mark of energy theft. They use guilt and sympathy as tools to keep you engaged. The more you try to help, the weaker you become. Emotional parasites rarely want solutions. They want attention and control. If you suggest action, they resist. If you pull away, they play the victim. They are skilled at emotional manipulation, twisting your care into obligation. They expect you to be available always, yet they never offer the same in return. You become the listener, the fixer, the emotional container for their pain. Helping them feels like kindness, but it is actually self-abandonment. When you give your energy without limit, you disconnect from your own center. Jung believed that what is not made conscious appears in your life as fate. When you ignore your exhaustion, you unconsciously attract more of the same. Your unhealed need to please or rescue keeps inviting takers. You protect your energy by setting firm boundaries. Stop explaining, stop justifying, stop feeling guilty for needing distance. You owe no one constant access to your peace. Observe who leaves you calm and who leaves you drained. That difference is the map to your boundaries. Choose silence over forced sympathy. Choose space over obligation. Protection is not cruelty. It is self-respect. When your energy is preserved, your compassion becomes stronger and cleaner. You can help from strength, not exhaustion. You can give without being consumed. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is essential for clarity, balance, and purpose. Walk away from those who feed on your spirit without offering renewal. Do not fight them, just disengage. Your absence will reveal what your presence was sustaining. When your energy returns to you, peace follows. That peace is your power. Guard it. Kindness is powerful, but without awareness, it becomes dangerous. When you act kindly without seeing clearly, you open the door to manipulation. Some people recognize your softness and use it. They test how far your compassion will go, how much you will give before you notice that they only take. They learn to speak your language of empathy, using emotion as a tool. What begins as goodwill turns into a pattern of control. Carl Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Unaware kindness is one of those unconscious forces. You believe you are doing good, yet you are being used. You help those who refuse to help themselves. You say yes when you mean no. You forgive those who have no intention of changing. Over time, you begin to feel resentment. That resentment is your psyche warning you that your kindness has lost balance. Manipulators thrive on unexamined compassion. They know you value harmony and avoid conflict. They know you fear being seen as unkind. They use guilt to keep you obedient. They present their needs as emergencies. They make their irresponsibility your responsibility. You find yourself doing things you never agreed to, all in the name of being good. When kindness lacks awareness, it becomes submission. You stop thinking critically. You confuse tolerance with virtue. You tell yourself that patience is strength while your boundaries quietly erode. True kindness is not blind. It sees motives, it measures intent, and it acts with wisdom. It knows that not everyone deserves access to your heart. Awareness turns kindness into power. It teaches you to read energy, not words. You begin to notice tone, timing, and pattern. You see who shows gratitude and who only expects. You realize that saying no is sometimes the most compassionate act. You stop rescuing people from lessons they need to learn. You understand that help given to the wrong person turns into harm, for them and for you. Jung believed that wholeness requires integrating both light and shadow. Awareness is the bridge between the two. It keeps your kindness rooted in strength. It prevents others from exploiting your good nature. When you are conscious of why you give, you maintain control of your energy. You no longer act from guilt or fear but from clarity. Kindness with awareness respects truth. It helps without losing self. It listens without absorbing. It gives without being drained. It loves without being blind. This is the form of kindness that transforms rather than enables. It frees both the giver and the receiver. When your heart is open and your eyes are awake, your kindness becomes a force that no one can misuse. Growth is not a one-sided process. It requires movement from both hearts, both minds, both wills. No relationship, friendship, or mentorship can evolve if one side refuses to grow. When only one person carries the work, the balance breaks. One becomes the giver, the other the weight. True transformation happens only when both take responsibility for their part in the process. Carl Jung said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Growth demands this reaction. It asks for exchange, reflection, and effort. It cannot survive in an atmosphere of denial. When one person keeps learning and the other keeps resisting, the relationship becomes stagnation disguised as loyalty. You can guide, support, and inspire, but you cannot evolve for someone else. When you pull them toward awareness while they pull toward comfort, your energy divides. You spend yourself trying to lift what does not want to rise. This kind of help is not noble, it is draining. It keeps both souls trapped, one in dependence, the other in exhaustion. Willingness is the seed of every change. It does not mean perfection. It means readiness to look inward, to question habits, to face discomfort. Without that readiness, advice and encouragement mean nothing. Words cannot reach a closed mind. You cannot teach insight to someone who refuses to reflect. In any bond that seeks growth, both must risk vulnerability. Both must accept the possibility of being wrong. Growth does not happen in comfort. It happens in confrontation. With truth, with ego, with shadow. Jung believed that nothing changes until it becomes conscious. Willingness is that first act of consciousness. It opens the door to evolution. When only one person carries this awareness, imbalance appears. The willing one starts over-explaining, over-giving, and overextending. They begin to shrink so the other can stay comfortable. But growth that requires your diminishment is not growth. It is decay. You must recognize when your effort no longer inspires response. The moment you realize the other person is choosing comfort over growth, step back. Your absence will teach what your presence could not. Sometimes silence and distance are stronger teachers than words. Growth is a shared journey. It cannot be forced. It cannot be begged. It requires mutual courage, the courage to see, to change, to evolve together. When both sides bring that willingness, transformation becomes possible. When only one does, wisdom lies in letting go. Envy rarely announces itself. It wears the mask of admiration. It smiles, praises, and watches closely. You think you are being appreciated, but you are being studied. The envious person learns your rhythm, your strengths, your habits. They want what you have, but not the path that built it. Their admiration is observation mixed with quiet resentment. Carl Jung said that what we deny within ourselves appears in others as something intolerable. Envy lives in that denial. The envious soul cannot face their own stagnation, so they project it onto you. They tell themselves that your success is luck, that your peace is pretense. Their ego cannot accept that effort and discipline shaped your progress. To them, it feels unjust that you have what they secretly desire. At first, they seem supportive. They compliment your work, they ask for your advice, they appear loyal. But small cracks appear. Their compliments carry a hint of tension. Their questions feel intrusive. They start comparing themselves to you or subtly reminding you of your flaws. They disguise competition as humor, criticism as concern. If you fail, they comfort you with satisfaction hidden beneath sympathy. If you succeed, their silence grows longer. You must learn to see beyond words. Watch energy, not expression. Envy reveals itself through small details: the lack of genuine joy when you win, the quick shift of mood when you shine, the need to diminish your achievements in conversation. These are signals. Awareness protects you from betrayal disguised as friendship. Helping an envious person often turns against you. Your openness becomes vulnerability. They may imitate your ideas, your work, or your manner, then present them as their own. When you confront them, they deny it and call you insecure. Their goal is not connection, but validation through comparison. They measure their worth by how close they can get to your level, or how subtly they can pull you down from it. You cannot cure envy with generosity. The more you give, the more you confirm their feelings of inferiority. They interpret kindness as arrogance. They cannot see your goodwill, because their lens is tinted with self-hate. Jung believed that healing begins when one accepts the shadow. The envious person avoids this, so their shadow grows stronger. Stay alert, not bitter. You do not need to expose them, distance is enough. Protect your ideas, your goals, and your peace. Share your progress with those who celebrate it sincerely. Let results speak for you, not explanations. The envious will always reveal themselves when light appears. Admiration that is real inspires action. Admiration that hides envy breeds resentment. The difference is subtle but visible to a conscious eye. Trust your intuition. It always knows when praise is pure and when it is poisoned. Pity looks like compassion, but it often hides control. When someone seeks pity, they do not want understanding. They want power through weakness. They use their suffering to make others feel guilty, responsible, or obligated. What appears as vulnerability becomes a method of influence. It traps both the giver and the receiver in emotional dependency. Carl Jung said that every emotion has a shadow. The shadow of pity is superiority. When you pity someone, you unconsciously place yourself above them. You see them as helpless and yourself as savior. This creates imbalance. They start to depend on your validation, and you start to depend on their need for you. Over time, both lose freedom. Those who seek pity understand this dynamic well, even if they cannot explain it. They present themselves as victims to attract care. They exaggerate pain to secure attention. They avoid responsibility because suffering brings more reward than change. When they feel you slipping away, they remind you of how much they have suffered, how alone they are, how no one else understands. Pity keeps you tied to their emotional script. Pity also allows manipulation through guilt. The person who constantly reminds you of their wounds can make you feel cruel for setting boundaries. They use emotional fragility as a weapon. You hesitate to speak truth because you fear breaking them. But this is exactly how control is maintained. You silence your truth, and they maintain their comfort. Jung taught that growth requires confrontation with pain, not indulgence in it. When you pity someone too much, you deny them that confrontation. You keep them small under the excuse of care. True compassion does not see others as weak, it sees them as capable. It helps them rise, not remain dependent. When you pity yourself, you stop growing. You use your pain as justification for inaction. You wait for rescue instead of responsibility. Pity, whether given or received, halts evolution. It replaces courage with comfort. You must learn to separate empathy from pity. Empathy feels with others, pity feels for them while keeping distance. Empathy respects equality, pity creates hierarchy. When you help someone from empathy, you empower them. When you help from pity, you control them. To beware of your motives. Ask if your kindness strengthens or weakens the other. Ask if your help builds dependency or independence. If the answer is the former, step back. The most loving act you can offer. True connection grows through respect, not hierarchy. The moment pity enters, authenticity fades. To love others well, you must see them as equals in potential, not as victims in need of rescue. Only then can compassion remain pure and free of control. Boundaries are not barriers. They are lines that protect your mind from chaos. Without them, your time, energy, and emotions become open to anyone's demand. You lose direction because you are constantly reacting. Boundaries are how you tell the world who you are and what you will allow. Carl Jung believed that individuation requires separation. To know yourself, you must define where others end and you begin. Boundaries serve that purpose. They create psychological space for clarity. When you protect that space, you protect your sanity. People without boundaries often mistake compliance for kindness. They say yes to avoid conflict. They absorb the moods of others. They take responsibility for problems that are not theirs. Over time, resentment builds. Their body grows tense. Their mind grows tired. They begin to feel invisible even while constantly giving. This is how burnout begins. When you set boundaries, you are not being cold. You are choosing self-respect over approval. Every yes must be backed by a conscious no. A person who cannot say no has no control over their own life. You teach others how to treat you by how you treat yourself. If you do not value your limits, no one else will. Boundaries also reveal truth. When you start enforcing them, people show their real intentions. Those who care about you will respect them. Those who used you will resist. This reaction is your clarity. The moment you say, "This is enough," and someone becomes angry, you have learned everything about your relationship with them. Jung observed that the unconscious often drives people to merge with others, to lose themselves in relationships. Boundaries counter this instinct. They remind you that love does not require self-erasure. You can care deeply and still protect your peace. Compassion and firmness can exist together. Strong boundaries keep manipulation away. They stop emotional parasites from feeding on your energy. They give structure to your empathy so that it does not become self-destruction. When you are clear about what is acceptable, others cannot distort your intentions. You act from choice, not pressure. To maintain sanity, you must honor your limits daily. Decide who gets your attention, what conversations you allow, and which battles are worth your effort. Protect your time as you would protect your health. Every distraction, every unnecessary drama, costs mental space. Boundaries are the gatekeepers of that space. Do not feel guilty for protecting yourself. Guilt is a tool used by those who benefit from your lack of boundaries. You are not responsible for everyone's comfort. You are responsible for your stability. Peace is not the absence of people. It is the presence of limits. Sanity grows where self-respect lives. Boundaries create that foundation. Without them, the world pulls you in every direction. With them, you stand centered and calm, aware of what belongs to you and what does not. The impulse to save others often hides a deeper wound. It comes from an old need to feel worthy, seen, or in control. You convince yourself that helping others gives your life meaning, but beneath it lies unresolved pain. When you rush to fix others, you are often trying to fix the part of yourself that once felt helpless. Carl Jung called this the wounded healer archetype. The healer's power comes from suffering, yet if the wound is not faced, it drives unconscious behavior. You help others to escape your own emptiness. You project your unhealed parts onto them. You see in them the pain you refuse to acknowledge within yourself. Their struggle becomes your mission because it mirrors your past. This can look noble, but it carries danger. You start helping without being asked. You give beyond what is healthy. You feel guilty when others suffer, even when their suffering is not your responsibility. When they refuse your help, you feel rejected. When they fail to change, you feel defeated. Your emotional state becomes tied to their progress. You mistake control for care. People who constantly try to save others often fear abandonment. By being useful, they ensure connection. By fixing others, they secure purpose. But this is not love. It is fear disguised as service. You are not helping them grow. You are protecting yourself from your own pain. Jung believed that true healing begins when one integrates the shadow. The urge to save can be a shadow trait when it masks avoidance. You avoid your own healing by focusing on others. You stay busy rescuing because silence would force you to face your own wounds. You give to others what you deny yourself: understanding, patience, compassion. This pattern also traps the person you are trying to help. When you rescue someone repeatedly, you take away their chance to face reality. You make them dependent on your strength. They stop developing resilience because you carry their burden. The relationship becomes unbalanced. You feel needed, they feel incapable, and both remain stuck. To break this cycle, you must face your own inner wound. Ask why you feel drawn to broken people. Ask what saving them gives you that solitude does not. Healing begins when you stop projecting your pain onto others and start nurturing it within yourself. The desire to help will still exist, but it will come from strength, not lack. Helping others is not wrong, but it must come from clarity. You can guide, support, and inspire, but you cannot live another person's lesson. Their pain belongs to them as yours belongs to you. You are responsible for your own wholeness, not for theirs. When you heal your wound, your compassion changes. You no longer save to feel complete. You help without attachment. You love without control. You can walk beside someone without carrying them. That is the difference between saving and supporting. One feeds your ego. The other feeds the soul. Helping someone who refuses to change is a slow form of self-destruction. You cannot heal those who choose comfort over growth. You cannot open the eyes of someone who keeps them closed by choice. True transformation demands willingness. Without it, every effort becomes wasted energy. Carl Jung said that no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This requires courage, not comfort. Many people claim they want change, but what they truly want is relief from pain without facing its cause. They want freedom without responsibility, progress without effort. When you help such people, your compassion turns into exhaustion. You must understand that growth cannot be transferred. It cannot be given like advice or pushed like a gift. Change is an inner decision, a confrontation between the ego and the shadow. The moment a person refuses that confrontation, they block transformation. You can guide them, but you cannot walk their path. You can point to the mirror, but you cannot make them look. When you keep helping those who resist, you start carrying their weight. You take responsibility for their emotions, their failures, their missed opportunities. You tell yourself you are being kind, but in truth, you are avoiding your own boundary. You confuse empathy with rescue. This keeps both of you weak. They depend on your strength, and you lose yours trying to hold them up. Jung believed that genuine change begins with self-awareness. It happens only when a person recognizes their role in their own suffering. Until that awareness appears, help has no soil to grow in. Advice turns into noise, guidance turns into burden. People change not when they are helped, but when they are ready to see themselves clearly. Your energy is sacred. Use it where it can bear fruit. Help those who take responsibility for their life. Help those who listen, reflect, and act. These people may fall, but they rise again. They may doubt, but they learn. Their effort multiplies your effort. Your help becomes a catalyst, not a crutch. When you stop trying to fix the unwilling, you make space for those who are ready. You also reclaim your peace. You begin to see that true compassion is selective. It does not come from guilt or ego. It comes from discernment. To help everyone is to drain yourself for nothing. To help the right ones is to build meaning. Transformation requires pain, honesty, and discipline. Those who avoid these are not ready for growth. You can love them from afar, but do not carry them. The world needs your strength, not your depletion. Help only those who walk toward light on their own feet. Jung believed that every act of projection reveals the inner world. When you try to rescue others, ask what part of yourself you are trying to save. Often, the urge to fix others hides your own unhealed wound. You must learn the sacred boundary. Help only those who want to awaken. Help only those who take responsibility for their soul. Compassion without discernment destroys both giver and receiver. True love respects limits. If you wish to live in peace, remember this truth: you cannot heal those who refuse to meet themselves.
Right. you.